join in as well. So, yeah, seems like we are live. And thanks for joining once again. Um, Matthew, can you go ahead with the introduction?
Yeah, if you
Or
go
is
to
it
the next,
Antonio that's going to be taking to the mic right now?
well, so if you go to the next slide. Okay, yeah. Shall I just give a quick introduction to myself?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go over the agenda, and obviously, we have amazing speakers, guys. Feel free to use the Q&A button that's present, and we'll make sure to answer all the questions. I will be sharing the resources for trying single store for free. We are actually giving away $600 worth of free credits that you can actually use right now during the session to make the most of your time. While following along in real time during the session. And that's like the best practice that we tend to advise because we have experts that are there on the panel and they can guide you with everything. So yeah, Matthew, please take it away, and thanks everyone for joining.
Okay. Hi, yeah, I'm Matt Simpson. I'm an SE here at SingleStore. Yeah, I've been here a few months now, and yeah, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction, Antonio, before I say the agenda?
Okay, thanks so much. So my name is Antonio Castello. I've been serve as the director of technology partnerships at Collibra since joining Collibra back in 2020. I've been pretty much working or in the front of some leading strategic collaborations with key technology partners. My focus has been pretty much on reimagining our approach to data and AI governance, which is pretty much our sweet spot, and our approach to secure data access and data sharing. And sort of with that, build a more or better interconnected Calibra. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, just a little overview of the agenda. So I'll talk a bit about what single store is, and then I'll go through this sort of AI data stack, explain where you can get your sort of performance from in that stack and how it works in an enterprise. And then I'll sort of hand over to Antonio at that point to explain why you need data governance with your AI stack or your data stack. And yeah, he'll talk about that, and then he'll go into a demo for you guys. Okay. Oh, please could you go next slide, Antonio? Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so just a bit about SingleStore, if you don't know us. So we were formed in 2011. We're called MemSQL, so in-memory SQL. And then in 2017, we added vector support and semantic search support. So essentially, I'd like to think we've had our vector support around for a long time before it's become sort of fashionable in the recent years. So we've got a very robust system there to support that in your AI systems. And then in 2020, we rebranded into Single Store because we like to see ourselves as a single store for many different things. So, like I said, vectors, you've got your relational data, time series data, geospatial data, for example, all in one space, hence the name Single Store. So you can do everything there. And then coming up to today, we've got over 500 customers now. And yeah, so companies from like Goldman Sachs, big banks to lead generation companies, sort of firming our place in the database market space. Could you go next slide, please? Okay, yeah, if you double tap. Perfect, thank you. So what is SingleStore? SingleStore is a relational database where you can do transactions, analytics, and contextualized data all in one space. So a lot of companies might have multiple databases to do this thing or to do these things. With SingleStore, you can do it all in one place. So for transactions, we have a row-based in-memory sort of distributed SQL store, which is also horizontally scalable. So this essentially means you've got aggregator nodes and leaf nodes. So you can scale your architecture up depending on your demand for your transactions. We also have a column store. This is where you'll do your analytics and real sort of to power your AI and data apps. So we also have quite a cool feature that I personally like is our pipelines feature. And this is where you can ingest data, say from Kafka or I don't know, blob storage straight into those leaf nodes. And then you can run your analytics on that data and then send it to your applications so you can see them or you get that data insight in real time. So you've got really good data freshness. And then last of all on this slide, we've got the vector support. So you have your semantic search, your keyword search. Another cool thing about SingleStore is we've got this notebook function or feature, sorry, where you can you can do the vectorization in SingleStore and then save that to your save that essentially. So we, like I said before as well, we support all types of data, so structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data, and yeah, it depends on your needs, but we can we've got a cloud, a managed service on cloud, we've got on-prem offerings as well, and a BYOC, so bring your own cloud. Please could you go to the next slide, Antonio? Okay, so that's basically what SingleStore is in a very quick nutshell. So what I'll do now is I'll talk about the AI data stack and where as a company you're going to get your performance from. So if we look at the bottom of the stack, you can see we've got our GPU and chip providers. So for example, your NVIDIA's and whatnot. And then on top of that, we've got our compute. So we've got AWS, Azure. And then on top of that, we've got our models. So that's, for example, OpenAI, DeepSeek, or also an open source one, Hugging Face, for example. And then on top of that, we've got the platforms. So this is where, as a company, that's where you're going to leverage your data for AI models to get to fuel your applications or your, let's say you've got an internal AI, that's where you're going to fuel that. So you're going to bring your company's data in and that you're going to contextualize it there and then send it to the models, for example. And then if we go one step up on that, we've got the apps. Oops, sorry, back one slide. So we've got the apps. That's where sort of your users and whatnot are going to interface with the app. But if we go back to the bottom of this stack, we've got our chip providers. Everyone's using the same chips. So if you're wanting to build a new product, you're not going to get any advantages there. If you're building an AI app, you're not going to build a new chip to beat the competitors. And then again, if we look one level above that, we've got our compute. Everyone is using the same compute. So everyone's using AWS or Azure or GCP. So you can't get any advantage there. Again, above that, we've got the models. So in our model providers, everyone's using OpenAI or DeepSeek or Hugging Face, for example. So you're not going to get any, advantages there. But if we go again to the platform, that's where you're going to get your advantage for your application. That's where you're going to have to leverage your company's data, your company knowledge base, and then interact it with the model. That's going to be your differentiator at that stage in the AI stack. And that's where you've got to beat the competition, basically. Please, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so I'll just talk. So this is essentially how an enterprise company would set up an AI. So, an AI agent. So if we look on the left-hand side, we've got our customer or our user. They're going to talk to a support agent. So this support agent would be, a machine, for example, and that support agent is going to have access to three different things. Intelligence, so that's the LLM model. Tools, so that's APIs. So for example, say if you wanted to automate some tasks, you might have some APIs there, so it could fill in some calendars, make some invoices. I don't know, you could get fancy and do some presentations, for example. And this AI agent is also then going to have access to your company's knowledge. So in a normal enterprise company, that knowledge is going to be distributed across a lot of different databases. So you might have, I don't know, a Postgres database with user data. You might have a Mongo database with, I don't know, document data. You're going to have a vector database to get your contextualization, and the list goes on. And if you want to leverage that, you're going to have to build a lot of ETL to connect this all together for that AI agent to then go and get that knowledge and bundle it up and then send it to the LLM. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of development hours, sort of building all that ETL, stitching it together. And also it's going to increase your latency because you've got to sort of go to many different databases at during that pipeline. So it's adding a lot of time to your LLM, and you need that to be fast so your end users get that result quick. Otherwise, if it takes 5 minutes, for example, for them to get a response that's contextualized to your data or to your company, it's no good to them, right? It's too long. Wouldn't it be a lot easier if that whole stack on the right hand side was gone? So all your AI agent had to do was do what we call a single shot retrieval. So a single shot into SingleStore, for example, and then in that one query, it could pull back all the data it needs, bundle it up, and send it to the LLM. So therefore, you would lower the latency of everything you need to send back to your customer so that they can get the response they need. So you're cutting down the latency there. And also in SingleStore, we support bringing data in from, say, Mongo, so you can CDC it in. And like, what was it, SQL Server, for example, you can CDC that data in. So you might still have those, but to get your AI up and running really quickly, you'll run it through SingleStore. So you can get those really fast analytics and queries. So this sort of leads me on to, okay, this is all really good. You've got an enterprise AI, but for it to function well and actually be useful for your end users, you've got to have good data. And this is where I'm going to sort of hand over to Antonio to explain why you need the governance and provenance to power your AI system, and so your users can have confidence in what you're building.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so I hope everyone can hear me. So yes, back to Mariu's point about the need of governance and provenance and why we are here today, Collibra. Many organizations still today often overlook the necessity of ensuring that the data required for the success of those data and AI projects are both available and suitable for the intended purpose. In certain instances, internal data remains dispersed across various databases, storage locations, formats, which complicates the scaling of your AI initiatives, okay? Although not entirely unfeasible. Yes, as Matthew mentioned earlier, SingleStore has a unified data platform designed to handle both real-time analytics and transactional workloads. With a single shot retrieval, data architecture can alleviate a lot of that burden for you. However, the way we see this, and while it may be overly simplistic, there are a few issues that tend to pop up quite often, okay? Including, for example, and to name a few, Mike already suggested and mentioned a few of them, data exists in silos. Most organizations have tons of data. Often data is either incomplete, inaccurate, or inconsistent, and a large portion of or percentage of that data is actually coming from unstructured and therefore not easy to organize. Now, the reason I'm actually listing those 3 or 4 bullet points there is because obviously those are important. If you think about that, AI models are often seen as black boxes, and decision makers may or not understand how the model arrives at these predictions or decisions, making it difficult to trust the outcomes. The AI models are often also seen as, well, something that the accuracy and reliability of those models depend on the quality of the data. If that data that they are training on, or if there's doubt or uncertainty about the quality of that data or the representativeness of that data, the trust in the model outcomes also diminishes. So the 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 challenges that are related, or some of the challenges that are related with the AI governance or the data and AI governance, not only are technical or have technical aspects, but they also in some way depend on other non-technical kind of solutions. Organizations often are cautious to deploy AI models due to potential legal and ethical implications, such as privacy violations, making decisions that could harm individuals. I mean, there's the fear of unintended consequences that can lead to reluctance in trusting all these models. Okay, so all these factors combined create a situation where organizations kind of hesitate to fully rely on the AI models, preferring to use them cautiously. Now, overcoming these challenges requires not just the technical solutions, like obviously what we're saying, SingleStore, but also or Collibra, but also a strategic alignment within the company, within the organization, to ensure that data and AI initiatives are successful and sustainable. Now, so the current environment or the situation we are in, on now most organizations are in now, has created some sort of imperative for structuring some tangible and solid frameworks or methodologies that can prioritize trust and promote some sort of transparent data practices, right? So Collibra and SingleStore, the way we see this, their combined strengths can help organizations build trusted, high quality data products and align with the business objectives, the regulatory requirements, and the data governance best practices. Now, by doing so, I believe, or we believe, that organizations can improve their competitive positioning and establish a strong foundation for effective, responsible, trustworthy implementation and use of that data. Now, here's pretty much how and just to enumerate a few bullet points, a few aspects that make the value proposition of both Collibra and SingleStore. I mean, obviously, SingleStore, probably most of you already know it, a unified data platform designed to, as I said, real-time analytics and transactional workloads. It's often the choice for hybrid performance, high-performance data workloads, so that they can actually use various data processing apps, including AI models. It combines easy access with data security and some level of governance, enabling data sharing and consuming experience, right? So on top of that, what Collibra brings is a unified intelligence, and we'll see some of that in a second. So a unified intelligence data platform that not only considers a wide range of personas and use cases with its own flexible governance model, but it's also pretty much focused on creating a knowledge base which can or should be or is accessible by every one of his users, of the consumers. So it brings more trusted data with complete business context to more users across more sources and across more use cases. We'll see some of that, how that is actually being done, okay? Where actually time is going to be spent as well, because it's actually fairly easy to actually talk about it, but you'll see that there's things which may actually be complicated or complex to actually get done, okay? But also importantly is that Collibra also allows businesses to manage the complex data workflows efficiently, okay? And that allows you to actually collaborate better and also establish roles and responsibilities in a way that can easily be tracked and accountable, okay? So here's one way, a simple way we can actually see this. And after this, we will be looking at how that actually looks in the demo, okay, in the app. So this is obviously a fairly simplistic, again, architecture. So on one hand, we have a number of different data sources. Those can be databases, data warehouses, lakes. It can be any other apps, I don't know, that may actually provide some additional semantic data, star dogs, at scales, and many others. It could be any cloud DB and databases and software as a services, Salesforce, for example. Could be any streaming and IoT, anything coming from Kafka streams and all of that stuff, files and structure, all of that information. So on one hand, we have all these capabilities to actually push all of that data into SingleStore platform, okay? I'm not going to get into those details today. I think much would probably be better to explain those, but if we assume that we can actually get all those in the SingleStore platform, the data will be on that single place, on that single space where we will have a single shot retrieval data architecture that will actually facilitate having access to all of the information that we need, our models need to actually do and come up with the outcomes that we expect them to. Now, with that, we also have the ability to connect. Collibra has the ability to connect to all those data sources and pull what we call, or catalog, or register what we call the metadata, not only the metadata, but also some lineage provenance, okay? But we also are able to, in some degrees, obviously, to actually run some quality measures, quality rules against a number of different dimensions, and we can actually collect all of that information and have that information available in Collibra. Okay, so once that's actually available in Collibra and catalog in Collibra, and we have all of those evidence already in Collibra, that's when we actually go and we can do a number of different things, starting by defining who should own what, or who should be responsible for what, or who should participate in what way in what specific workflows or business processes, to things like who should be having access to what data, and that data should be protected or not. And then that's when we start looking at things like discovery and classification. So we try to understand exactly what that data is. We give it a classification. We hope that people actually start connecting that with specific data domains, which is somewhat related with data mesh kind of thing. But that also helps us specify or determine who is actually going to be responsible for that data in specific. At that point, you actually get to know a little bit better that data, and you can actually tell if a data is restricted, is private, is public, is PII, if it's PCI, is PHI. And at that point, you can actually start building rules that you can apply and enforce on the different data sources and on specific data consumers as well. Okay, so we can see at this point in time, we can see a SingleStore as a source of data. But as you'll see in a second, as we go into the presentation, SingleStore can also be a point or a Collibra data consumer, as they could potentially consume data out of Collibra, or we push data out to SingleStore, depending on how do you want to see that. Now, how does that look like? Okay, so in reality, and I'm going to be, sorry about this, I need to change my page, so forgive me for that. So let me see if I can find it, and I'm going to show you the demo. Okay, so the demo is going to be minding that we don't have much time. The demo is not a typical demo that we would typically do on a customer, but on the other hand, what we'll try to do is to show you in some way, in some degree, how we would actually address some of those topics, where we would start, what would be the passes that we would go next. Okay, where we stay, so how much have we done with SingleStore so far, how much we are actually wanting to do in the future. What is that we want to work and have on our own roadmap, okay, with respect to the integration with SingleStore. So basically, like every other, and I'm going to actually hide this, every other data source, there's one first step where you actually connect to the data sources. In this particular case, is no difference. We actually establishing a connection with the SingleStore, by the way, so that we can all understand what is being done. I have a SingleStore workspace available here. With that data workspace, I have a number of databases which I've previously cataloged, I've registered. So I'm actually explaining how that work has been done. Okay, so pretty much the way we've addressed that is by having some sort of connectivity with the data source. In this particular case, we're actually using a JDBC connection string with some additional credentials to connect to that data source. Okay. Another thing that I'm going to do is, instead of actually losing time navigating through and spending my time on clicks, I've prepared some of the steps already in advance so that we can move forward and faster, so that we can see a lot more of the demo. So, but ideally, you have your connection, you test the connection is done, you have a successful connection with SingleStore. Then comes the time to say exactly how much you want to get out of SingleStore. That's what we call edge capabilities, for those of you that may already know a bit of Collibra. And in this particular case, what I'm actually saying is that I want to have from the data that I collect from metadata that I collect from SingleStore, I want to do not only the catalog piece, the catalog piece. I want to do the sampling. I want to do the profiling. I want to do the data classifications, and I want to be able also to do technical lineage. Okay, and we'll go about that in a second. But there's also a number of different other capabilities around data protection, for example, like the protect, which we have available for a number of different data sources. We don't have that yet for SingleStore, but that is actually something that I will show you later in a second briefly, but that is actually something that we want to do with SingleStore later if that is something that we see there's some interest from customers. Now, once we decide what capabilities we want to actually do and pull from SingleStore, it's time to actually register things. I've done that already. So, but pretty much the idea is that once you actually connect, it shows you or everything, all the schema. I'm connecting to this only this specific schema, and not, so I'm just working on this schema here. So what I've done is decide exactly what I want to ingest. And in this particular case, I just include everything, okay? Now, all the tables that I find, all the views that I find, there's no exclusions rules, there's nothing like that, okay? I decide where I want to keep that information, and that's pretty much that. I also decide if I want to run any sort of profiling on any of the schemas or the tables, so I can actually add those rules. Last but not least, I can also decide to actually synchronize and schedule the collection or the lineage capture. Okay, so that's pretty much what is being done. So there's all these three capabilities that have been already specified. There's one first capability that I will see next, which is the data classification. Okay. Now, once at this point, your cataloging, your registration completes, obviously that will take the longer the number of the databases or schemas or tables or columns you may have, the longer obviously will take. But once that process is actually done, what you will have is all your tables, database views, schemas, all being registered with some metadata that has already been found. So what you see here is that same TPC database, TPCH database with the TPCH schema and all the tables and views that have been found. So if I actually go here, and this is just so that you can actually see what I'm actually capturing. So the tables and pretty much all the 4 views that I have there, I'm actually capturing all of that. So looking at one table in particular, for example, the customer table, if I look at that, oh, sorry, this is not the one. So I'll go here. That's okay. So if I look at the customer table, you notice that I have all the columns of that table, for example. Not only I have those columns, but I also have the statistics. I don't have much statistics available, so this doesn't really make much sense right now. But you would actually have some distributions and some frequency graphs that you could actually be available. You would have some basic statistics as well that you can use. I mean, it's not going to be 100% accurate because obviously you're working on samples, but they will give you a first idea of how good that data is. And that is actually particularly interesting when you've run data classifications and you already understand what data you have in hand. So for example, if you have something like address or full names or countries or phone numbers, and one of these might be for some reason should be always different than null, then the statistics that you may actually find there can actually help you have a first idea of how good that data might be. And we'll get to that in a second. What is important here is that you get not only the metadata from the columns, but also the profiling, the sampling. You can just go and ask for sample data, but the profiling. The profiling can start by just suggestions, but at one point where you actually have enough confidence about the data classification, you will actually accept the classification so that you don't necessarily have to come here and click a button, accept or reject a classification as it should be. Now, moving on. Okay, so let me take this off because this is not important. So the other aspect of what we've done is, as we've run also the lineage capability, we capture that lineage. Now, here's what I need to tell you about lineage. Lineage today is not yet ready. There's no technical lineage capability for SingleStore today as is, right? What we've done was to take a similar technical lineage capability for a similar data source, MySQL, and hoping to see how far you would actually go in understanding and capturing everything that is on the transformations that you can find on SingleStore. And to be true, there's work to be done. Okay, so if I go ahead and actually go and see the status, there is some parsing errors, because there's some differences with respect from SingleStore with respect to MySQL, which we understand, but at least we have an idea that how complicated or how difficult would be to build something specific for SingleStore, because it's not much different from MySQL. Now, that does not mean that this is going to be ready tomorrow or next week, but while that is not available, there's always this other option to actually do something custom and build something that we call custom integrations, custom technical lineage, which is us building some sort of script that pulls the information that ultimately goes and creates that lineage graph for us. Sorry. Now, what else okay, so once you have the graph, the technical lineage graph, obviously you will see all the dependencies being reflected. You can navigate through that. You can actually capture some code, which we don't, because obviously it finds not all of it, because it doesn't really find, it failed to actually parse a number of transformations, but those transformations that he actually was able to parse, you can actually find them. You can actually see exactly where that happens, okay? So that's lineage. Cool, so what we've done this. Right now, what we've done was to actually have, and this is an example. So what we've done is we've connected to a system, SingleStore. We've got everything from a table, database, TPC, a schema, and we've got all of the table schemas from that database. Now, if we look at this particular one, then we can go in a number of different directions. And here's where things can start to not complicate, but you have a number of different options depending on how you prioritize things. Typically, what we do is we often prioritize accountability. So at that point, once we have something already available in catalog, maybe it's worth actually suggesting or telling or deciding who should participate or who should have what sort of roles with respect to that data. Who owns it? Who should I go for if there's questions being asked? Okay, so who actually owns that data? These sort of roles and responsibilities. So this is one way you can go, and this is fairly easy. So you actually go and establish those responsibilities. So responsibilities are nothing less than what sort of activities you can do on specific data that may be available on a specific domain and community. Communities being anything like a team to a group to a function to a department or more. It can actually be an abstraction of a number of different things that is there to actually facilitate roles and responsibilities assignments. This is one way to go. That's probably how the most common way people actually goes about it. The second step typically is about starting to actually add some sort of context, meaning business context, descriptions and terms and definitions and such, and have those actually connected. The other one is, because you may actually have available, is to actually run some data quality exercises, runs, jobs, which we did. And I can actually go and hopefully, no, don't have access right now, but I do have the results of those jobs. You can run those quality jobs, and you get to have the result of those jobs in the data quality engine being pushed into Collibra and have all of that available. So you know exactly from that job that has been run, exactly what sort of rules have been implemented. So for example, I'm looking at this is the columns and the rule itself. I've done something fairly basic, but pretty much you have all those jobs and all those rules, which in turn, the results of those rules are actually associated or related or connected to the columns themselves, so that when we're looking at, for example, in this particular case, I'm actually at the database, all the information and the results that I actually found at the column levels, they are surfaced up to the table, to the schema, to the database, so that you understand exactly what I'm actually showing here. So pretty much what I have is a number of, and I'm going to show you here, a number of rules that have been run on a number of different columns, which actually happens to be on a specific table, which surfaced that to the database. And because obviously all my data is perfect and all my rules are all very, very simple, I got a 100% quality score, which is not often the case. Definitely, if that's what you have, is probably something wrong there. But the point is, you get all of that information as well. Why? Because obviously is the indicators or the evidences how well that data might actually be one of them. It is not necessarily the only one of them, okay? Because as if you know Collibra, there's all these things around social that you can actually have people commenting and rating the data that they work with, so that they can in some way help people understand what sort of data they want to work with, because it already exists, and reuse and all of that. We'll see that in a second as well. Okay, so we've done at this point what we've done. We've done all what we could do with the physical, with the SingleStore database, right? We've done all the metadata, we've profiled, we've sampled, we've run classifications, we've run lineage, we've run data quality. We have all of that information. Now, what is also important is, right, this is the second, not the second, but the other path that you can actually go about, which is, okay, so now that we have this, let's connect that with a data domain. Okay, let's say that this is customer data, or that is employee data, or that is order data, or that is an event data, something like that. And by doing so, and in this particular case, what I have here is all this connected to the customer domains, data domains. So at that point, what I have is a custom address and a customer full name and a customer phone number. And I think you know exactly where I'm going with this, because at this point, when I start looking at the work that has been done, and as I start with connecting all of that information with those concepts, I get to see what data may or may not be restricted. Okay, so I can actually go and find exactly what data may or may not be PII. And I can actually go and and I'm going to show a few things here. I can actually go and start exploring a bit further and can actually see that that data in specific may have some data sharing agreements being established. And if I go further, I may actually find that there's some contract that rules all of that data sharing as well. Now, obviously, this is a lot of information for you. What I would like to explain is that typically what you see here in blue is someone from business, marketing, supply chain, finance, that is actually helping and contributing with providing additional context to the information that we have, like, for example, uploading or importing all the contracts that they may actually have, or registering in some way all the contracts that they may actually have. You may actually have the privacy people with all the data sharing agreements, with all the data categories, with the data classification policies. And that's why we say that all of this is a collaboration effort to get where we are right now. Okay. So this is something that you could already do with SingleStore, right? There's nothing that prevents you to actually do that with SingleStore. Now, if you do have that, then this is what we've mentioned earlier, protect. That's another path that you may want to do. I mean, you now know that you have customer data, emails, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, credit card numbers. You know that those are PCI, PII, PHI. You have some restricted data. You want to protect that. And this is what we typically, or for what we typically use protect in our case, is to design the policies and have those policies being enforced in the data sources. Now, obviously, this is, again, something that is already working for a number of different data sources like Databricks, Snowflake, if I'm not mistaken, BigQuery, and I think there's an AWS, but there's none, for example, SingleStore. And that's part of the work that we may be evaluating in the future. How can we design these policies in Collibra? And for example, one such like this, where I'm actually a simple one so that everyone understands, where I'm actually taking anything that may be these three data products that I have here, and anyone that all the information that may already be classified as PII, somehow mask it to everyone that is public. Okay, this is pretty much what he does, and maybe do something like this where actually what I'm doing is, yes, that you've protected all of that information, but now what I'm saying is if someone is actually running direct marketing, someone from marketing, maybe someone from support needs that information for whatever reasons, this is maybe not a great example of things, but I'm actually not masking this, okay? And this may or may not actually have a time period, you need a start and an end date, okay, as you assign those groups to individuals. But this is the sort of rules that we would like to later enforce that to SingleStore as well, okay? So that once you, and SingleStore, if I do remember well, there's some row level security done. I'm not familiar with SingleStore, but I think there's nothing like a column level masking, but I'm pretty sure that there are probably ways to actually do and address that with views. So I'm almost confident that there's a way to actually address that, but this is something that we need to evaluate and consider and look at, okay? Now, all that done, so we have all this data, we have all the evidences of the data, how good that is, where that comes from, what transformations he actually went by. I also have that being already protected, so I may actually decide to expose that to the marketplace, so that when I go into the marketplace and I go and look for something, I can actually find it, and I'm going to make it something a little bit weirder, so that you can actually go and have all of that information, and you can actually go and find the product that you want to look at, okay? And here again, you can have all that information around details, business values, business cases. But the important things around responsibilities, who to go to when you want to have a sort of conversation, any sort of actions that you may want to have, like ask questions or create an issue or add to basket if you want to request access to that, okay? But also you can go and directly go to that data, and you will take you to the data in the application here, okay? So that you can actually go and see and find a lot more details, maybe ask and query the diagrams, find exactly how far you've gone with that, and maybe whatever you want to, and I'm going to explore all of it so that you can actually see what we have now. Explore all. So this is the data products, which happens to be, and let me put the label so everyone understands what that is. It has an input and an output port, and the output port probably, if I'm not mistaken, should already have some data set on one hand, and let me do this as well. So there's a data set that is the result of that data product, and there's also a data contract that rules that data product, and there's the input port over there that probably also has the data set, so data set in this particular case that worked for implementing that data product. So pretty much this data product could be a topic for another conversation here, but that's pretty much the idea. You can also, here is the data product, so that's pretty much what we saw earlier, and I'm guessing that I have the same diagram here. So pretty much that is exactly what we have, the data products, the input and output ports, the contracts, the information that is actually available or provided with the contract, like address, names, and phones, for example, which if I can continue exploring further, I will see that that connects with everything else that has been done. Okay, and last but not least, and I'll skip that for now. There's AI governance, right? So where you can actually, and I'm going to briefly, because obviously we don't have time to cover that. You have all your data products, you have all the evidences, you have your marketplace where you can actually request access. You can get those accesses being approved or rejected. So you know exactly who has access to those products, those data sets, those data products, those AI models. You can have all of that information available. So the AI governance is a framework, and let me think about exactly how we're going to frame this in a simple way. Is a framework that takes all of that information that is pretty much already available and surfaces that with a use case that you've defined. For example, I want to take control of all the unstructured data resources, and I want to create some sort of meaningful interactions. Okay, so pretty much this is me creating some sort of LLM with a RAG, so that I can actually ask questions and I can ground the RAG to the data or the documents that I provide as context. So I want to know exactly what that looks like. I want to know what sort of data I'm working on, what sort of data that contains, what classifications, what categories, what policies, what contracts, what purpose that was done. I run obviously a number of different assessments to a number of different people to understand exactly how from since when we ideate to as we go and document those data products or those AI use cases, and as we implement those and we push them live, there's all these questions and assessments being run that are captured and surfaced with a use case, which obviously later I can go about and obviously diagram. Probably have it there, but anyway, and I can actually start surfacing all of that information, use cases, the models, the prompts, the documents, the buckets where those documents could be found, the data sets that maybe actually be on a specific database, which I can continue exploring, the results, the metrics, the results, and if I don't forget, we can actually go and query this further and say, okay, so the documents actually have the metrics that I'm actually interested in measure on that AI use case. And what else we have here? Okay, so the risks that entail that use case, the controls that have been or should be put in place to actually mitigate those risks. Any sort of business terms, definitions that may be helpful in support of the use case so people can actually understand what that is or what that means. And if I go further, and I'm not sure if this is actually going to take long or not, but I could potentially go and surface and see exactly, okay, that's fine, not too bad. What sort of data I found on all those files, on all those buckets that I have available on my rack that I've been pushing to my rack, what sort of data I have there. This probably explains why I have the risks that we saw earlier, because I have things like beliefs, releases, dates, emails, PII. All of that information explains why probably I have this sort of risks over there. Okay, and the controls that I may actually do, make sure they are in place to actually take care of those. So this is in a nutshell what we could potentially go, or how far or as far we could actually go with SingleStore. Okay. I know that we're running out of time right now, but there's so much more. We can go and connect with something like Signavio and get and pull all the business processes out of Signavio and have those connected with the data concepts that they use, so that I can understand who is using what sort of data and how critical that data is, if it's PII, if it's PCI, and if there's what sort of contracts and what sort of purpose and what sort of rules and it should be in place. I could connect that with LeanIX, and I have the applications and I have all of that in relationship also established, so I can understand which applications may or may not be critical because they may use restricted data. With all of those connections being done, reports, models, visualizations, APIs, what I actually get to do is to actually have a very good idea of what data sets or data products are more relevant and which ones are not. Okay, so all these steps sum up. Obviously, not all of them are simple. And not all the customers can or are at this stage where they have all of this. Most likely, some of them are on their initial stages where we have catalog. Some of them, they actually have the catalog, the lineage, and the quality. Most of them, or the large majority, probably is looking at classifications and the categories that we saw earlier, so that later they can actually do and publish and enforce policies to protect and grant access to data. There's quite a few with AI and AI governance, something that we actually betting a lot on. So I think this is pretty much all I have for you today. Hopefully you found something interesting. Yes, I know that's too much information, but you have a reference, an idea of how much can actually be done. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think we still have some time for Q&A. And with that, back to you, Matthew.
Yeah, I think we've got some good questions in the Q&A chat. If we want to have a look, should we answer some of those? So we've got a question: how is the AI treated in Collibra from an RBAC standpoint?
So let me see if I can find it. Okay. So how is the AI treated in Collibra from RBAC standpoint? Okay, so AI meaning the access to the models or the access to the data that the models using, or the access the data the AI models have access to. Because so data, the way we actually protect data or enforce data is by defining those policies and then having those policy enforced by the different data sources. Uh, let's say that in the future, SingleStore would be one of them, or through someone that actually does that for us already. Okay. So if you're looking at what data can an AI consume, that AI model, that's pretty much, I'm not entirely sure if we can limit, but we can definitely understand which data is being pushed or fed to the model. And as we run our discovery and classifications ourselves or with other partners that we work with Sierra or Halo, there's many that actually does that discovery and classification as well very well. All of that information is available, so we can actually surface all of that information with the AI. Okay, so that you can take the measures that needs to be taken, either being looking at the risks and the controls, update those if missing some, enforcing those controls, making sure that they are in place, etc. Is there a build? Which one does enable AI agent to be treated as a data steward? Okay, that's a good question. AI agent is something that we are in a beta state, and there's a few customers that have already access to the beta product. We call it AI Copilot. So yes, or maybe better said, we will have soon enough on public. Is there a build capability? Is there a build capability to ensure AI agent does not hallucinate across all the metadata assets that are not related to a prompt? So we don't really build the AI agents, right? So we don't really have the RAG. What we actually do is understand and expose what is being fed to the RAG, unless you're actually talking about our AI Copilot. Because if we're talking about our own AI Copilot, the metadata that is available is all account specific, so customer specific. But I suspect that's not the case. So we don't really have the RAGs. We don't really build the RAGs. The RAGs is something that customers have. The documents are customers' documents, so that's the customer data that is being fed to the RAG. But as those are actually being fed and registered, and once I starting doing that discovery and the classification, structured and unstructured, I can actually get a fairly decent idea of what data is actually being fed, and if there's a risk of actually being pushing data that it shouldn't be pushed into the RAG, so that and then coming somewhere out on some of the agent outcomes. Is there a single stock Collibra integration use case to Databricks Unity catalog? Ooh, interesting. I don't think we do have one. We haven't thought about, but we do have an integration with Unity catalog. I'm not entirely sure if there's a single store Unity catalog integration,
I don't
but
think so.
I wonder what we looking at here. That's a good question. No, I don't have one today. Is there lineage offered based on the AI agent's navigation across the catalogs and metadata? Not entirely sure about what is meant, but if it is about technical lineage, as we've seen earlier, that is all about data and transformation. So if that is not the case, then what we do have is all these relationships established between the AI use cases and the models and the data and everything else, prompts, which are meaningful relationships that have been established. So if those have been registered and cataloged, yes, okay. Is there any, okay. To which network hierarchy level, big, large networks and protocols is single stock considered safe to use for distributed database? So I'm not entirely sure how to answer this one. Do you know, Matthew?
No, not off the top of my head, sorry.
Is considered safe to use for distributed database
Angus might
systems.
be piping in here.
I didn't really understand this myself, but Anna, if you want to retype your question and maybe provide a little bit more detail, please, we'll get to it. Sorry, we're not clear on the question.
So moving on, because I think we're running out of time. Can you show the guided tours AI beta? No, I do have it actually available on my instance, but it's in beta status, so it's not therefore actually doing ready in the ready state to actually do those presentations. Is going to be soon available. Do data tagging. So data tagging is a feature that to track data lineage level, is it? Data tagging. Not necessarily data tagging has a number of different purposes in Collibra. It could be anything from adding context so that you can easily find things, right? Or search for things. But it can also be tags for enforcing policies. So for example, I'll take for example, I may actually have those classifications and categories which can be found. And for example, we saw a column, phone number, customer phone number on a specific table. So what we do is we actually push that tag in Collibra, obviously, and we, depending on those tags, we build the rules with protect, saying, hey, if anything that may have this tag or that tag, this classification or that category, for example, for us to understand better, do this. And that is the enforcement. Okay, so that's data tagging. Is there pre-built notebooks with Collibra data governance under Gallery in Data Studio? This is something for you? Data Studio, I'm not familiar with Data Studio.
This is on the SingleStore Notebooks gallery. There isn't one today. Maybe it's something we can consider, Antonio.
I'll take note because this is actually an interesting one.
Yeah.
I need to understand exactly how much we can do with the notebooks, but
we can work together on that. Yeah. So kind of not today, but we'll try and create one.
So next question. So you issue prompts, take controls of our blah, blah, blah. That generates a response. Well, the idea around here is to track and keep a record of all the prompts that have been used to train the models. So you understand why the model behaves as it behaves, why the model gives you the data, the results that it gives you. It's not enough just with the documents that you actually fed the RAG or fed the LLM. It's not enough with the data sets or the data that is being fed, but you also want to know and have some sort of control or knowledge about what sort of questions, prompts have been asked to the model when it was actually being trained on. Okay, so that is it. Okay, so the intent is not to actually have all the prompts because it's barely impossible. I can ask any questions to ChatGPT. I want to know exactly what was the questions that have been asked when training that model. Okay, so that is pretty much the purpose. The RAG for the enterprise and structured data resource, is there an opportunity to try that on my organization data websites? Could that be done directly with Collibra or through SingleStore? I think in this particular case, it can be done through Collibra. It would have to be through your customer success manager, I believe. If you are, I understand you're already a customer of Collibra, so I suspect that you have a customer success manager assigned, so that it would be the way to go. Okay. In either case, I mean, I think later you'll have our contacts. You can always drop me a message, and I find out who the account team is, and I'll get you in contact. Okay. So is the agent treated as a LAN ID or group ID and IDM? No, I don't have the question to that, Raghu. I'm not sure if it's specific to Matthew and the SingleStore team.
I've missed it now, sorry. Where's
the first one?
Is AI agent treated?
Yeah,
I'm not too sure.
Raghu, again, if you want to add more to explain that question, please.
Okay, so how does Collibra ensure traceability and accountability for real-time AI decisions when integration with platforms like SingleStore, especially in high-risk domains in healthcare or finance? Okay, it's a good one. I mean, there's no simple answer to this. There's no one answer either. So what I've tried to actually show you on the example there is that we want to know as much as possible about the model or the use case better than the model, the use case, because it can be actually multiple models and multiple data sets, multiple data products, whatever. So we want to know more, as much as possible from the AI use case, from the ideation through all the documentation and through the life cycle before he actually goes into a process where it's going to be approved or rejected. Okay, so that is the piece of governance that we obviously haven't seen because we don't really have time. But there's all these processes around the models, like the same way we have all these processes around data products. So there's some sort of supervision there and some sort of approval where it gets to be approved. Not only that, but you also have accountability, meaning someone will have to be responsible for that model. And not only the model itself and updating the model and changing and all of that stuff, but responsible for the results that model that gives, the outcome that model gives, right? So someone must be responsible for that. So we will have that information as well. So those are the sort of questions that we will be looking for as well. Okay, who should I call when this model starts behaving crazy? Okay. Is it then possible to set a context window for a prompt? Ensure there's relevant and confined to the company metadata assets. So again, we don't do the models, we don't do the RAGs, we don't write the prompts. What we do is expose all the data that has been in some way used and consumed while in the process of ideation to going live, so that you have a better understanding or at least evidences of what has been used to actually train that. From data sets to the models to the prompts, all of that information, okay? Everything that could potentially in some way influence the files, the documents, the tables, the columns, anything that could potentially influence the results and the behavior of the model. But we don't control the model, okay? How would I know what were the touch points of the AI on the metadata from a lineage standpoint, similar to a workflow? That's a good one. Okay, so the one that we right now as we do is okay, so let me see how I get to this. So when we actually going through that AI use case, from the conversations and the questions, I think we should have spent more time on the AI governance piece than anything else. But when we actually establish and looking at the use cases, the AI use cases, and as we collect all of that information, part of the information that we're actually collecting is all the data that is actually being fed, right? So we've talked about that again. So it could be, again, a number of different resources, right? Files on a number of different buckets or tables on a number of different databases. Hopefully, with SingleStore would be pretty much everything on a SingleStore with a single shot retrieval kind of approach, right? But the idea is that you have all of that information available and represented in with the use case. Okay, so if there's touch points to the metadata itself, I mean, typically when you actually run the models, they give you, when you ask questions and they give you the responses, they tend to actually say where the source of that data comes from. But at this point, we don't do nothing with that, right? Because obviously there's no control about the questions that are being asked, okay? I know what the sources you can find the information from. What else? Legislative and total ownership would be for first time. How many questions we have? I mean, I'm mindful of the time that we have. I'm not sure if everyone is okay with continuing going through all the questions, but you tell me. Okay, I'm happy to continue answering any questions that I know. Legislative and total ownership would be for first time more important for developing an LLM solutions with database distributed over cloud. We're concentrating on LLM, AI versus metadata and design when those will be important. I'm not entirely sure exactly what was the context here, but solutions with database distributed over cloud, we're concentrating on LLM or AI versus metadata and design when both will be important. Is there a prompt lineage diagram for a completed Q&A session? No. No, because we don't really track, again, the prompts and the questions to the models. Okay, so we don't do that. Okay, what we again do is we track the prompts, or at least we try, or we suggest. Okay, let's put it like that. Okay, because it's obviously all this you can do as much as you want. Okay, so in this particular use case, on this particular exercise, in this particular demo that has been done, the purpose was to just register in catalog and have an evidence of the prompts that have been used again to build and train the model. Okay, so that you have an understanding of how he behaves. Okay, again, connected to all these other questions that we had earlier. We don't know who's actually, we don't know how often a model is being asked questions. We don't know what questions they are asked. All of that. All we do capture, though, which I haven't mentioned, is that we capture metrics from the models. So, and those metrics are actually being published and exposed also in Collibra, because we want to do that because obviously we want to know if there's any, and this connects with something else that we're going to be doing in the near future around control towers, because we want to know when that model starts behaving somewhat wrong or different. So, but right now we don't have that prompt lineage or nothing like that. And AI is used by a team, ID, or an individual. These two are registered as entities in identity system. Like I could, not sure what the context here as well either. It's probably okay. So, I mean, again, before we close, I think was also very good. I mean, it kind of tells me that there's quite some interest around AI and AI governance as well. Maybe could be something else that we could go for in the future. What I want to say is that what you see here is something that has been specifically built for this particular demo. There's obviously a lot more, but also there's things that have been chosen to be built in the way that has been built, which in customers may take a different form. That is why we have going back to that the point that I've made it earlier. We make all this possible because we have a solution that is powered by this active metadata graph, but more importantly, we have a flexible operating model that allows you to accommodate all of these things in a way, okay? And the workflow engine, which helps you orchestrate all of it, okay? So he helps you orchestrate all your processes, okay? So that is why sometimes the effort is bigger or smaller, depending on how much of work that needs to be done. He also includes data catalog, governance, lineage, quality, observability, privacy, AI governance into one single end-to-end experience, right? And this integration with SingleStore would ultimately give all users across the organization secure, seamless access to high quality, what is most important, trustworthy data you can use and scale. Okay, so that is pretty much the idea. And hopefully that was a good session for you. Thank you. How does Collibra align with governance frameworks from global and national bodies like? Okay, so NIST AI RFM is something that we actually doing. I'm not entirely sure if it's already on preview or in public. I can go and ask and maybe get back to with an answer. Okay, but we're definitely looking at that. Okay. So back to you, Matthew.
Yeah, that's everything from me. So yeah, thank you very much, Antonio. It was a really good presentation and demo.
Okay.
All right. So thanks everyone. This was amazing. And Thanks everyone for joining. Your time is so valuable to us. Thank you, Antonio, for agreeing to do this webinar with us. And it was really so insightful. And thanks everyone for asking so many questions. Just a reminder that this session is recorded and will be sent to you via email. And we have amazing future sessions that are also coming up. We also have a webinar tomorrow. So if you like this session, feel free to join the next session as well. And thanks again for joining. And